girls, and welcome to another episode of the Hey Girl podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jenn Parker, with my girl, Bethany Needham.
Hey girls.
And today, Bethany interviews Heidi Parks. Girls, you are going to love this episode. Heidi is fun, vivacious, and she's traveled a little road, and she shares it with just this authentic and real voice that I just think everyone will relate to.
Yeah, Heidi's pretty impossible not to love, but also just feel like you have gained so much wisdom. I don't know, just the whole conversation. I just wanted to mute my mic and let her talk and just take notes.
I took notes while I was listening to it because it was so good. So girls, without further ado, let's jump into Bethany's interview with Heidi.
Hey girls, it's Bethany here with my girl Heidi Parks. Super excited to have her on the podcast. And even though she's nervous, I know she's going to do great. Even though she's squealing. I promise you, she's really excited. So Heidi,
yeah,
I'm in your home, out here on the lake. It's a good day.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. You saw it in all its glory with dishes piled up high and a mess everywhere and dog hair on my floor. So, I mean,
this is real life.
This is real life.
Which is what Hey Girl podcast is about. So it's perfect.
It's great.
And you made me this fancy... What did you make me?
It's called an espresso.
But you steamed the milk.
Yes, it's nice and frothy, so it's going to give you a nice little mustache on your lip, and it's fantastic.
It's perfect. Guys, you all need to come to Heidi's house and have this special treat. She's going to love me for inviting you all to her house.
Come on.
Bring a broom, wash the dishes. We'll all be helpful. It'll be a good time. So I'm not sure how many of our listeners have ever met you before, maybe know who you are, but I would love if you would take some moments to just share some of your story. Who are you? Where'd you come from? And yeah, just let us know a little about Heidi Parks.
All right. Actually, there was a running joke at one point when our kids were very little, because everybody saw my husband, who is Nate Parks at Camp Berea. Do you even have a wife? Like, we see her picture on Facebook, but we've never actually seen her.
That's so sad.
It is so sad. So now that we live on the grounds, it's a little different. Where I come from is I was raised in a Christian home. We lived in New Jersey for a good chunk of my younger years. And then once I hit 14, we moved to New Hampshire. And so I have been in New Hampshire ever since then. So a very good long chunk of my life has now been in New Hampshire.
Wow. But you were a Jersey girl to start.
I was a Jersey Shore girl.
What?
I know. Before the Jersey Shore, I was not naughty like those girls, though. But yeah, a Jersey Shore girl.
The fact that you use the word naughty pretty much affirms the fact that you were not one of those Jersey.
Exactly, because they wouldn't have to say naughty.
I love it.
When I hit 19, after I graduated from high school, I stayed home for a year. I did not go to college right away. Did not know what I wanted to do with my life. I just knew that I wanted to serve the Lord, whatever that meant. So basically, my parents had always encouraged us to take 1 year and do Bible college and then try and figure out your life from there, So
nice.
I knew that was going to be in my life. So I had chosen a school that was out in Missouri, and that was my plan, was to go there. And my brother was going to go to a school in Wisconsin. So the trip was to be Darren get dropped off in Wisconsin and then continue on to Missouri with Heidi. Once I got to his school in Wisconsin, though, I felt the Holy Spirit strongly saying to me, you are to go no further. This is where I want you to be.
Wow.
Really? Yes. So I was already registered at a different school, but I strongly felt like this is where God wanted me to be. And so we talked to the administration, and they were like, fine, that's fine by us. And so I stayed, made my parents' trip a little bit shorter for them, and life was great, So I was only there the 1 year. Mm-hmm. And that is where I met Nate. And maybe that is the whole reason why God brought me there, was to meet Nate. I'm not quite sure, but that is where we met.
Wow. Do you remember the first time you met him?
I do. He tells everybody we met on a sidewalk. which was basically, I actually knew his brother before I knew him. Because, yes, I knew scandal in the Parks family. Yes, I knew his brother first because he was in one of my classes. And with Nate, I just remember hearing singing in the hallways all the time and pounding on the piano. And we went to a very conservative school where, pounding on the piano was not really looked at as a positive thing. Ooh. And so I'm like, I like that jazzy sound. That sounds like my kind of person, And so his brother was like, yeah, that's my brother, Nate. I'm like, really? Okay. And so I think it was a week later, Nate was like, well, I know everybody at the school. It was a small Bible college, but I don't know you. So
good line.
Yeah.
Well played, Nate Parks.
Well played. So we met that way. We quickly became friends. He and I both were kind of the understanding of, I don't want to date in college because they basically label you as married. And so
true.
Yes, so true in a small Bible college. So it's like, no, I just want to be your friend. And he felt the same way. And so basically for a good 14 months, we were friends. And so I had a mission trip that I was supposed to be going on with a friend of mine to Spain, and it got canceled 3 months before the trip. Had all my money raised. I was ready to go. And it was supposed to be in Spain. And so Nate's like, oh, my mom and dad live in Spain. They run a church. Come do your missions trip at my house.
What?
Yes. So that is what we did. My girlfriend and I, we went to his parents, stayed Christmas with him and his family, got to see what the Parks house was like outside of a school situation.
Gotcha.
And really sealed the deal for me that this guy was solid and this is who I wanted to spend my life with. So I already knew I loved this guy before we even dated because our friendship was so strong. So we had the conversation in Spain of dating. And the feelings.
The DTR.
The DTR, yes. All the feelings coming out of how we felt about one another. And so it was solidified in Spain in front of a bull rink.
What?
He confessed his undying love for me.
That's so romantic.
It was.
I love it. I feel like I just need tissues right now.
Yep. So basically that started it, and he came to New Hampshire after he graduated. I did not finish school, so I only did 1 year of Bible college, and that's what brought him to New Hampshire. We had a pretty long engagement, 14 months. Don't recommend it.
Oh,
yes, but you know what? When you've been dating somebody from a long distance the whole time, you kind of need to really see them day in, day out. So that was all God. I mean, at the time it was like, oh, that's a long time, but it's like, you know what? No, we really know who each other are now. So it was all of God. So that was where we are. And in the early years, we both worked just regular jobs, was not in ministry full time. So we did youth group. We helped out with the youth group at our church. We'd come up on the weekends and do snow camps at Rumney. Our summers were spent working at a camp at Rumney. And so that's kind of like in our heart, we had a love for camp ministry.
Yeah.
And so God put that on our hearts early. As a matter of fact, when Nate was in high school, his principal did like a walk that they would do.
Yeah.
And he's like, I see you as a camp director someday,
Really?
Exactly. And in his mind, that was like a megaphone yelling at kids. So completely different from what we are doing now. Fast forward some time, we come to Berea. There was no deep freeze back then. It was just a summer camp. And
deep freeze is the winter camp.
Deep freeze is the winter camp.
Okay.
So there was no winter camp. It was only those couple of months in the summer, couple of fall retreats is all you had here. And so he was hired to run the winter camps, to start a winter camp.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very exciting. I'm 25, he's 27. We are excited about life, like nothing can go wrong,
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong, So our first weekend was not a program weekend of our winter camp. It was a rental. The people went into their cabins at night and they woke up the next morning to still have snow on their shoes. That was not a good thing. Oh. Some of our pipes were freezing. There was no heat in some of the cabins. The dining hall couldn't be used because it wasn't winterized yet. We would give them a 5-gallon bucket to flush their toilets, and we would give them a container to brush their teeth with. That was what Berea was back in the winter. And our very first weekend, Nate was belaying somebody at the rock wall, and I was cleaning cabins, because back then you did everything. And everybody had a walkie-talkie on them. Nobody had cell phones back in those days. And we get this 911 call that we needed an ambulance in the gym. And, it's the middle of lunch and cleaning, and there's nobody that can really, break away from what they're doing. And they're like, well, just let Nate handle it because he's in the gym. We're like, well, we can't because it is Nate.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So this is how I'm hearing about this, is over the radio, cleaning cabins. Oh. So everybody drops what they're doing, goes running to the gym. And what had happened was Nate was 16 feet up in the air, was restringing a belay string rope, and pushed off. And back in the golden years, the way they had been trained was not exactly the correct way of training.
Right.
And there was no mat on the ground at the time, so it was just the cement.
Oh, I'm hurting.
Yeah. So the girl she was just a volunteer. Back then we didn't really screen our volunteers the same way, or it was just early years.
Yeah.
It's just
because nothing could possibly go wrong.
Exactly. It's the early years, and so he fell 16 feet.
Oh,
straight onto his back.
On cement?
On cement. How he did not die is beyond me. It's all of God that he didn't break an arm, but he did break his back. Oh. So, we're in the hospital. They're looking at all the x-rays and stuff. And, he had broken his back. And now our first winter camp was going to be him in a body brace from the hips to the armpits. I laugh now. It was not funny at the time, but I do laugh now. So that was our first winter experience here at Berea.
Could he walk, or how did he get around?
Yeah, because he could walk. It was one of those plastic ones that had Velcro, and he'd wear it under his sweaters, And he just kind of walked really stiff
So many great images running through my mind.
Oh, my favorite of all time stories during this time was at Valentine's Day. So he broke his back in January. It's now Valentine's Day, and there's a blizzard here. So I drove him, and I dropped him off at the really nice restaurant that we were going to, and let him walk in so he wouldn't slip, because he could really do serious damage if he slipped with this broken back. So I parked the car, and he goes in, and the hostess is like, oh, do you have somebody? He's like, yeah, my wife's parking the car. And they're like, your wife is parking the car in a blizzard?
Because it was under his clothes.
Yes, it's under his clothes, so they can't see he's got a broken back.
You look like a jerk.
You look like a wicked jerk. I'm like, play it up. So he lifted up his sweater, and he's like, I have a broken back. And then they felt terrible. So they give him the best seat in the house and everything, and they're all pampering him and everything. And I'm like, what's going on? So that was our first winter. And then we went into the summer. And at this point, we had been married about 5 years and had thought, hey, we should start a family. Because, we had everything clocked out. Okay, we're going to be married for 5 years. And then we're going to start our family. Because, we got married young. And so 5 years is a great time to start having a family. And, any 16-year-old in the back of a truck can get pregnant on prom night. So how hard could it possibly be?
Why not us?
5 years, we'll have a baby. We'll start stream them out every couple of years.
Nothing could possibly
go wrong. And so what we were realizing is hey, how come I'm not pregnant? Months are going by, no pregnancy. More months, a year goes by, no pregnancy, So at this point, we're like, okay, we need to go see a specialist and find out what's going on. And, they reassured me, you're young, it'll be fine. They gave us some medication to kind of help the process along and just to see if that was the issue. So the next summer comes along, and I have this pain, severe pain in my side. And I like to exercise. So I'm thinking I must have pulled a muscle, or that this must be what the issue is. And pain's not going away. It's just irritating all the time. And so I went to our camp nurse, because we have great nurses here. And she's like, "Ain't chance you're pregnant?" I'm like, "Well, we are trying." She's like, "Go to the hospital immediately." She's like, "Oh." And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "You have an ectopic pregnancy." And I'm like, this is our camp nurse telling me this. And I'm like, "What?" And once again, I mean, when you're in camp life, you can't just like pause things and be like, "Oh, honey, let's go to the hospital now." You know, like I remember Nate was in the middle of the lake on a boat. We had no walkie-talkies. You know, he was just doing his thing. So I'm like, "Oh, I'm not going to bother him. I'll just go to the hospital myself and figure out what's going on." And sure enough, ultrasound and everything, they checked, and ectopic pregnancy. And so they decided that, you know what, let's just do something that's not so invasive. We'll give you some medication that will take care of this. That way you don't have to have surgery. It'll save your tube, you know, because you guys are young, you're trying to have kids. Let's do it that way. So we're like, okay, that sounds good. So every week they'd bring me in and they would check to make sure my hormone levels were going down and making sure everything was the way it was supposed to be. And I got more pain. And so, you know, they were just like, "Well, you know, it's probably kidney stones. You know, it's not uncommon to have kidney stones." And I'm like, okay, you know, I'm naive. I've never had any medical issues whatsoever. So I'm just like, all right, kidney stones. Let's deal with the kidney stones, you know. Was not kidney stones, more pain, more issues. Still the doctor's like, "Nope, you're fine, you're fine." I went in, my hormone levels, instead of dropping, had gone up. And so now I'm on my way to Dartmouth, driving a friend to her doctor's appointment, and I'm sharing my story like I am right now with her. I'm like, "I don't know what's going on. It's very irritating." And she's like, "You need a second opinion. Like when you drop me off at the doctor's, you just go run in and you go talk to somebody down there."
Yeah.
So that's what I did. Went into the doctor's and they were like, "Do not go anywhere."
Oh.
Yeah. So basically, to make a long story short, once I walked into Dartmouth just to get a pamphlet on ectopic pregnancies, they did not let me out of their sight. They're just like, "Okay, sit right there. I'm getting a doctor." Then the doctor comes out and he's like, "Do not go anywhere. I'm sending you to get an ultrasound from our technician." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So then the ultrasound, and then next thing you know, they're like, "Your ectopic pregnancy has doubled in size. And that pain you are having is you are bleeding internally."
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
You just wanted a pamphlet.
I just want a pamphlet. Well,
this escalated very quickly.
Well, and this just goes to show you my mind at the time, because I was going to New Jersey that night for a friend's wedding. And it's a Friday, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, "Can we do it on Monday? Because I have a wedding to go to."
Oh, my.
And the doctor just looks at me, he grabs my hand, and he's like, "Heidi, if you leave here, you will die before your husband gets you back here." And I'm like, "Okay, let's have that surgery." You know,
just kidding.
Just kidding. You know.
Wow.
So Nate's at camp. He's running the phones in the office, and so I call and I'm like, "Hey, honey, I'm going under the knife in an hour and a half." He's like, "What? Wait, what?" You know, like, what is going on? I'm like, "Remember that second opinion you wanted me to get? Well, I got it." And
remember the pamphlet you sent me for?
Exactly. "I'm dying. Come quickly. All right, gotta go." You know?
My word.
Yeah, because I'm an hour away and my surgery is in an hour and a half. So he just books it over there, and he literally got there as they are wheeling me into the room to have surgery. So yeah, nothing can go wrong.
Oh, did he drive himself? I feel like someone should have driven him.
No, he drove himself. Yeah.
If there was ever a day you need an Uber.
Exactly. No Ubers, no cell phones back in these golden years.
Oh, and he didn't get pulled over, though.
No. You know, backwoods New Hampshire, nobody's going to pull you over. Go. Yeah, you're pretty good.
Yikes.
Yeah, so that was like our first 2 years of Berea. You know, it was just kind of craziness. And so, yeah, and another year went by with no child, and we finally got pregnant again and lost another baby. So that just seemed to be the theme for us. And a friend of ours from our previous church, she was an older woman who just was such a sweetheart. And she said to me, "You know what, Heidi, I am not going to pray that God gives you patience while you wait on your family, because nobody wants patience. Nobody wants to pray for patience. But," she goes, "I will pray that God gives you his grace." Oh. And so, and she's like, because God's grace is sufficient. Oh. And so I just remember crying. Anytime somebody came up to me, so how come you haven't started your family? Bawl. So it just, be sensitive to these young ladies. Yeah. But her wisdom, that's what I would pray for. When, every month would go by and I wasn't pregnant, God, I need your grace. I need your grace. And so then when we finally did get pregnant, and it was the real deal this time, like it was going to go all the way to term, we got our ultrasound, found out it was a baby girl. Oh. Her name is Grace. So that is where Grace got her name. So, and now we have 3 children. It was like, once the floodgates were open, there was no problems. It's like, bam, 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 3 kids.
All you needed was a pickup truck.
No issues now, it's like we've got 3 kids. Life is easy, Oh. So we had 2 girls, Grace and Bella. And really we're hoping for a boy. It's like you got to have one of each, to balance out life. And Nate had really been praying for another one without any issues. We didn't want to have to involve doctors or any of that kind of stuff. And so God was really good and gave us a lot of grace in that, where we didn't have doctors anymore. And we had Isaac. And Grace and Bella were the best of buds. They were very easy toddlers, I have to say. They played very well together. And that was, once again, God's grace because of what we were going to be walking into that we had no idea. And that was with Isaac. When Isaac was 2, he was diagnosed with autism. And those who knew me closest, mainly Nate, knew that autism was my biggest fear. Mainly because, and I actually didn't know a lot about autism. It's just the articles I read were basically, my baby smiled and now he has no smiles. My baby talked and now he doesn't talk. My baby wanted snuggles and now he doesn't snuggle. Those are the things that I knew what autism was. I didn't really know the whole grand scheme of it. So with each kid, I would watch very closely. I was very, cautious with any kind of vaccines and all those kinds of stuff because there was all this write-ups. Nobody knew. They still don't know. So I just was being ultra cautious because I didn't want to ever be like, I knew better and this is what happened. So when we knew something was off because when I would be like, touch your nose, touch your toes, things you do with babies and stuff like that, he would just laugh at me. Like, I don't think he knows what I'm talking about.
Like, good job, Mom.
I know. He's just like, that's funny. Or, Isaac, go get me your diaper. Or things that my girls were doing right away, he was not doing. And I'm just like, something's not right. And so I would ask the doctors and they're like, no, he's a boy. He's number 3. He's got girls talking for him. And none of the doctors were worried because they were looking at all the things that made him not autistic, not the things that could possibly mean he was autistic. So as a mom, that feeling just was nagging at me that, nope, something's off. And so I really pushed for it. I'm like, no, I want to know. We need to go to like a specialist. And so they did. They said, and it was a long wait. It was like a good 10 months before we got into. Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. When you're waiting for a child development kind of stuff, it's not right away. So it was 10 months later.
So how old was he when you got?
He got the official diagnosis it was in November. He turned 2 in September. So he was just over 2. Wow. So we were noticing things at like 18 months, that there was things not right, When they uttered those words, your son is autistic, it killed. I mean, it was just like, it was like this cloud came over me of depression. Because then in the same sentence, they're like, he needs 40 hours of therapy a week. Good luck getting it where you are. So that made Nate question, am I obeying God's will by being in camp ministry? Am I supposed to be up north? Am I supposed to be, what am I supposed to be doing? If I need to be, putting the needs of my family first how can I be in a camp ministry where there's no services? And I was questioning the same thing. And I'm just kind of, as a mom, you just want to do everything you can to help your child. And you're just like, I can't do it. So then his whole second year was kind of a blur to me, because everything now was, is that Isaac or is that the autism? Every little quirky thing about him. Huh. Is that being a boy or is that the autism? And I'm supposed to be helping him through that so that he doesn't do those things, So it was a real struggle. His whole second and third year was just so much pressure of doing the right thing.
I would think too, at that age, being so young, that would be harder to discern too. Having had a boy, I'm thinking like, yeah, developmentally, doctors say that like it's just a boy and they just do things slower.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and it was hard too, because like the specialists, they would watch him play. That's how they diagnosed him, because like they said to us, you can't open up a brain of an autistic person and say, oh, there's the autism, or, there's an extra chromosome or an extra, like they can't take a blood sample. That's not the way it works with autism. It has everything to do with behaviors. Oh, okay. And so, they were watching him play with a toy bus and he would slam it into the wall, and I'm just like, because he liked the cause and effect sound of the crashing,
right.
and,
which could be a boy.
Which could very well be a boy.
Throw that bus in your face.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, that's how boys play. And in her mind, she was like, no, he at this age should be like putting little people in there and pretending that they're going to school or going to the grocery store. And I'm just like, well, that's how my daughters would play, but I don't know that that's necessarily how he would play.
Wow.
So it was a roller coaster of emotions of like, I don't even know what to think or what to make him do or what not to make him do. And, but God is so good. Within a month of us praying, like, Lord God, show us what we're supposed to be doing, Dartmouth called me and was like, hey, there is a new therapy starting up. It's ABA, and it's training parents how to work with their kids on the spectrum. It's brand new, just starting in January. So this was November, starting in January. But it's in Nashua, an hour and a half away. Are you guys interested? We're like, yeah, So it's like, this is our new normal. Grace was 6. She would be dropped off at first grade. And Bella was still at home, and I had Isaac, so we would drop Grace off at school, and we'd drive all the way down to Nashua. We'd spend about 3 or 4 hours in Nashua doing this therapy. I had a great friend that was down in Nashua at the time that would take Bella, and Bella would play with their kids and stuff like that. So she thought it was great. She didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
And I got to work with Isaac one-on-one, and they got to train us on how to help him and help, like, because it's a lot of hand over hand when you're working with kids with autism in the early years, of getting them to do things that they don't necessarily want to do. So that stage in life was just a big blur of driving. And then the next year he was in preschool. And once again, another opportunity opened up of God saying, hey, there's this new ABA therapy starting in Concord. So now it's a little bit closer, It's just an hour away instead of an hour and a half away. Are you interested? We're like, absolutely. So we pulled Isaac out of school so that he could get the 30 hours a week of intense ABA that he needed in Concord. So now both girls are in school. So we dropped them off at school, and then we would drive to Concord, and we'd let him be there all day, come home, do the reverse. And so that was our life for 2 years in the early years with him, until he hit first grade. Once he hit first grade, then it was like, okay, now we need to focus on the academics. And so we put him in school up here, and he's had an aide, and and it's a progression. It's just kind of like the new normal for us is just to be like living in our car, and still feeling like God has called us to Berea, living up in the northern New Hampshire. So we never, after God started opening those doors for us, it was kind of like confirmed in our mind that, like, no, this is where I want you to be. This is where I want you to stay. I will open the doors for you.
Wow.
And so we've basically been, every single step has been always the groundbreaking, starting new therapy, and it's always been God's grace of showing us.
That's incredible. Just because if you think about what, because I'm sitting at your house and where you live, like how much that just shows of God's provision. This would not be the place that you would tell someone like, oh, your child has special needs. Northern New Hampshire is a great place to get help. And yet that he's opened these doors as you've needed them. I'm curious, along this journey, I am sure that you've gotten input and advice.
Oh, yes.
Maybe more than you asked for.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking of those listening who either are walking through it with their own children or you described your friend in Nashua. What is some of the good advice you've gotten? What was unhelpful? And what might be advice you might give someone who's walking with a friend whose child is, whether they're diagnosed or they're walking through the diagnosis process with kids who are on the spectrum?
Okay, I would say the worst advice I got was, this came from another mother whose child was on the spectrum. She basically said, and she was a believer, or she is a believer, I should say she is a believer, but her mindset was that autism is not of God and that it's part of the sin nature, and that we must do everything we can to basically purge the autism out of our children. When Isaac was diagnosed, there was a book out by Jenny McCarthy that basically talked about how she cured her child of autism. Okay. And so the doctors would tell you, you can't cure your child. Like, they can grow and develop and, with good therapy and stuff like that in the early years, because that is very important. I don't ever want parents to think that their kid doesn't need anything, because no, those early years with the therapy is very, very beneficial and very important. But they had all these supplements and all these shots. Like, poor Isaac's little butt. I mean, every night when he was sound asleep, I'd jab him in the butt with vitamin B12 shots, because of the fact that all these people were saying, oh yeah, that will help increase his speaking, because he had no words and stuff. So everybody was sending me books on how to cure autism.
Wow.
Okay. And so as a mom, you're just like, okay, I want to do everything I possibly can, And yes, there are diets that you can put your kids on that will help with the symptoms of autism.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily to cure them of their autism. It's a big difference. You know? And I think that puts so much stress on me as a mom, thinking, I have to fix this.
Yeah.
This is me. It's all on me. Nate's working. It's on me to make sure. And every day that he looked like he was doing well, I was like, okay, we're doing it right. If he had a high, what I would call autistic day, like he was showing a lot of autistic symptoms, I'm like, okay, what did he eat? What did he get into? Like, what did I do wrong? It was so much stress. And instead of just enjoying my little boy for who God created him to be, I put so much stress on myself that I had to fix him.
Yeah.
And I did not enjoy those 2 years. It was just high stress all the time. Because doctors don't know where the autism comes from, everybody wants to think it has to do with whether it's inoculations, or it has to do with what they ate, or it has to do with the pesticides in the air. Don't ask a parent of an autistic child, what did you do?
Oh.
Because I had people from my church coming up to me all the time. They'd be like, so did you give Isaac his MMR shot? Did you do, it was like they wanted this list of things that I did wrong that caused this.
I'm like cringing and my skin is crawling at that.
Yeah.
It's awful.
It is awful. And at the time I'd just be like, because no parent wants to drop their kid off in nursery and have every parent be like, that's not the kid I want,
Oh.
So, stop crying, Parks. But those were the thoughts that would go through my mind when people would ask me these questions. It was like they just wanted to make sure that they didn't make the same mistake that I made. And produce the same thing, Now, I wouldn't wish autism on any child because it is very difficult, but it was not by mistake. And that goes into the best advice I ever got was from a dear woman from Nashua. She was my running partner back in the early days when Nate and I first got married. She lived right down the street from me. She was just that much older in life. As a matter of fact, she's probably the age I am now, in her early 40s. She had teenagers in the youth group we were working in, and she had a special needs child. He had, several different things, autism being one of them, but several different things. And so I would go to her for advice, because now her child's in his 20s, mine's just newly diagnosed, and she brought me to the passage in the Bible that talks about the blind man. I think it's the blind man where they're like, who sinned, the mother or the father?
Oh, yeah.
That made this man blind. But Jesus says it was not the sin of the parents, but it's so that the Lord could be glorified.
Wow. Good word.
Absolutely good word. Because as the parent, all I kept hearing was, what did you do that could have possibly caused this? And, talking with Nate too, he said he would pray like, Lord, is there a sin in my life? Is there a sin in Heidi's life? Is there something that we're not seeing that we did? These are the thoughts that kind of go through your mind. Especially, I think autism's a little different in the fact that they're not born with you seeing it. It doesn't show up until they hit about 2. So you sit there and go, okay, what did I do? Like you think something changed.
Oh, yeah.
Because you don't see it when they're little. Even though they are born with it, it's there. It just doesn't manifest and show itself until they're older. So there's a lot of speculation where you just sit there and go, okay. So that was the best advice I had gotten, was to be like, hey, you know what? God gave this to him, not as like, oh, this is punishment on you guys, or punishment on him, but it's for God's glory. And a couple of years ago, we went to a new church for Mother's Day. This is the best Mother's Day message I have ever in my life heard. And it was in the book of Esther, which you think, Esther for Mother's Day? Not something what I would have thought of, but he was on the passage that talks about, you were created for such a time as this. Okay. So Mordecai had gone to her and told her that she needed to go before the king to save the Jews. And she was afraid, rightly so. She was afraid. And his words to her were, God will raise up somebody to do his will, because his will be done. It's just whether or not you want to be a part of his story.
Wow.
So you can be a part of his greater will, or you can be afraid and take the lesser will. And what he shared with us as mothers is, don't worry about whether your kid's the best at baseball or whether he gets the highest grades or he's on every team that imaginable he said, what you need to be sharing with your child every night before they go to bed is that you were created on purpose for such a time as this. Oh. In this stage in life, God brought you here with your unique gifts and abilities, or disabilities in your mind, and God has a perfect will, and you can either say, I want his perfect will in my life, and I want to step up even if I'm afraid and do his greater will, or I will be afraid, say no to him, and he'll bring somebody else along to do it for him. So do you want to be a part of his story, or do you not want to be a part of his story? And to me, I was just like, yeah, I'm working so hard at trying to help Isaac, outgrow his autism, so to speak. But it's like, what if God created him with autism on purpose because he has something for him to do that he can only do because he has autism?
I like have goosebumps and tears all happening at the same time right now.
So that to me was life-changing. And that was about 3 years ago. So he was 7 at the time. That was a life-changing moment for me on just my mindset on the whole situation of okay, you know what? Scrap what the doctors say and everything. Continue with therapy and everything like that. But my mindset is, how do we help Isaac fit in the body of Christ? How do we help him see where his giftings lie, where God wants to use him? Ooh. So, yeah.
You're killing me. Isaac is your youngest.
Yes.
You've got Grace and Bella.
Yes.
What does it look like to love your kids? And similar to the things you've been learning with Isaac, but also with these other girls, loving them individually for that unique purpose, the unique gifts that, because my experience with friends anyways, who have kids with disabilities, they also have, it's not the one child. They have all these other kids and they're all wired differently and different gifts and different abilities, or as you said, disabilities, depending on how you look at it. So as a mom, what have you learned in this journey of how to love each child just as God designed them individually?
I would say the biggest is listening. For us, we have 2 girls, and girls who are going into their teen years, and we're very new into this because we have one about to turn 15 and one that will turn 13 shortly. But the mood changes, like when they were younger, they just wanted to be heard. They would try to out-talk each other all the time to tell me a story. They just want to talk. And now it's more about kind of like going into their bedrooms and drawing and just kind of retreating a little bit more. And they know, and it's easy because they know I'm busy with Isaac. So you have to work a lot more diligently with, seeking them out and listening. My oldest the other day made just a quick comment to me and then walked away. And I could see the look in her face that wasn't a quick story, And I felt the Holy Spirit prompting me to follow her. And see, so when I say listening, it's not just listening to your kids, it's listening to the Holy Spirit, because he's the one guiding you.
Yeah.
And if we're so preoccupied with things around the house or somebody texting us or phone calls or whatever it is, we don't listen to the Holy Spirit. We kind of stifle it. And so it's more about stopping what you're doing and looking intently at them and listening to what they're saying, and then follow through with just, hey, I noticed a kind of look in your eye that something is off, And in that particular story, she's like, no, I'm fine. But then 2 days later, she's like, so what made you come and ask me? And then I got the story.
Wow.
Okay. So it's learning those things now of being like, okay, I have to be much more intentional with them one-on-one, because they're still trying to kind of outdo one another, kind of compete with one another for attention with mom. I thought when they hit the junior high years, life would be easier, like they wouldn't be so demanding.
Yeah.
Heck no. It's like, what was I thinking? It's like,
now it's more,
and it's late at night, and it's like 9:30 hits, and I just want to go to bed, and Grace will come upstairs and be like, hi, Mom. I'm like, hi.
It's a loaded hi.
It's a loaded hi. Can I just snuggle with you? Sure. Okay, yeah, let's talk. So that is a new challenge for me at this stage in life is to just stop what I'm doing. And they both want just one-on-one time. Like, Mom, can we go shopping together? Just you and me, though. I'm like, okay, that won't be difficult at all. Gotta find somebody for your brother, and let's, make sure the other one's okay too. And then, so it's like, okay, you have your day, and then you'll have your day, so those kinds of things. It's a juggle. And because now at this stage in life too, instead of Isaac going to Concord, Grace and Bella are now going to Concord. So now we're driving once again, but now it's Isaac stays up here and goes to school, and Grace and Bella go to Concord to go to school.
Wow. And Concord is how far from here?
55 minutes with the wind at your back.
The wind at your back. I love it. I'm going to use that with my husband. No, hon, the wind was at my back. I wasn't speeding.
I'm just pushing you along.
I'm just helping.
Yes.
Wow.
All right, girls. So now you've met our friend Heidi, and I am positive that you probably have 8,000 questions, but also things that you're like, oh my word, this woman is amazing. And I just want to tell her that. But first, let's check in with Jenn and see what she thought. What kind of notes you took? I'm super curious. Where you at?
Okay, so first of all, I just want to say, like, I've known of Heidi for a long time, like pretty much since they've been at Camp Berea. But like, she's always someone that I'm like, oh, I wish I knew her better. I wish I knew her better, but never did anything about it. And now I'm like, now I have to do something about it because I just love her so much. But some of the things that stuck out to me just now being a parent, and when she decided, oh, well, my brother's going to get dropped off at this college, and then my parents are going to take me on to this college. And then God was like, no, you're staying here. As a parent, thinking about her parents and just what they were going through, and just trusting God that, yep, my kid heard from God and she's going to stay here. And that's where she ended up meeting Nate and just their camp ministry. I love hearing their story as someone who's brought their kids to Camp Berea since way back when, how she talked about Nate's broken back and just how they were just keeping the wheels on back then. I can just attest to the fact that it didn't feel like that ever, like bringing our kids there. Like, it was a great program then. It's a great program now. And I just love hearing that backstory of just all the work and blood, sweat, and tears they put into Camp Berea, and just how like it's grown and it's just a thriving ministry today. And I love that so much.
I wonder how often that is true in our stories too, where we feel like we're just barely, gosh, we're just getting through, we're making it happen. But then people who their experience of us and people that we have in our lives, while we might feel like we're just white knuckle gripping, barely holding on. And they're like, yeah, it didn't feel that way at all. Like your experience with Berea, but also I'm sure other people who knew Heidi and Nate, though they knew they were going through a hard time, just how God still moved so powerfully through them, not just when they had it together and felt strong, but even when they were literally broken and just making it happen, and God was still on the move. I think that's awesome and encouraging for someone who wrestles with that when I'm not having a good day and I'm like, oh gosh, like I got to pull my crap together because there's so many people counting on me, and God just being like, hey, for the record, on your best day and your worst, I'm the one doing the work here, so it's okay.
Yeah, definitely. I also love too, like in the midst of like getting camp going, and after, oh, we've been married 5 years, like let's try and have kids, and it just not happening. And just her story, I mean, that's some hard roads that they walked, and just like, oh, Nate, by the way, I'm going into surgery in an hour and a half, and you should probably come down. And I just loved how she just shared like so openly, and just how Grace is named Grace because of everything that they went through. And just a lot of kid stuff that is completely relatable, but I think that a lot of people don't talk about, and especially their son and his autism and kids becoming teenagers. And I love that story about how she shared listening to your kids and the Holy Spirit. I'm like, my mama heart is just tucking that away because I don't have teenagers yet, but I will. Probably it's going to come sooner than I think. And just, I loved how she just talked so openly about that. I loved it.
Especially being a mom of a kid with special needs and what that journey looked like. And man, it really challenged not just me as a mom, but how I walk with my friends who have kids with special needs, and loving them and supporting them and encouraging them. I took a lot away from this interview. We say it every time, but this was another one where I'm like, this is my favorite one yet. I loved it. I mean, and it was so good we've had to cut it into 2 episodes because there's just nothing we could take away.
Yeah, surprise! This is installment 1 of 2 episodes. Woohoo!
Yes. I'm thrilled. So I don't want to give too much away, but I'm so excited. And if you're listening to this part 1, definitely join us again next week for part 2. You will not be disappointed, and you're going to want to hear the whole story.
Absolutely. All right, girls. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
I'm done moving. I'm back in my full face, right in your face.
We're all about run your race in your face.
I'll take a sip of my seltzer.
Drinking your seltzer.